And all right, everybody, thank you for joining us again for Florida Rush College Recruiting Webinar. Today we are excited to have Coach Bryan O'Connor and Coach Tyler Sheik. I hope I said that correctly, Coach. Spot on, good. All right, and we are going to talk the NCAA Division III pathway today. So Coach Bryan O'Connor is the current head coach at Knox College. He is a graduate of Illinois College. While at Illinois College, he was an All-Midwest Conference player and NCAA All-South Region player twice. He was also the assistant at Knox College for 3 years. And in 2015, helped the team be ranked third in the country in goals scored per game. He currently holds his NSCAA diploma. Coach Bryan, thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we also are welcomed by Tyler Sheik. Coach Tyler is a graduate of Quinnipiac University. He is the current head coach at Bates College. He was the previous head coach at Knox College with Coach Bryan, where he held a 30-10-10 record at Knox, including a 22-2-4 conference record. They were the 2017 Midwest Conference champions. He is also coached at Illinois College and Mount Aloysius. Is that correct?
That one's tough. Aloysius.
Aloysius College. Thank you. Where he was the 2013 Men's Soccer Conference Coach of the Year.
I did win that popularity contest.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Awesome. So, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. And I just want to get started. I'll ask one of you these questions and then jump over to the other one. The benefits of a Division III school in general, just both academically and athletically.
I give it over to my better half.
All right.
Bryan and I, by the way, are very, very good friends.
Excellent. Excellent.
You might get mirror answers here.
There you go.
So obviously at the D3 level, there's no academic scholarship. So playing soccer isn't no athletics.
Athletic, yeah.
Soccer's not your job, essentially. You choose a D3 school for all the other things, whether it be the education, the opportunity it gives you, and kind of across the board. As generalization, D3 is typically higher academic, where you're choosing that institution not solely based on the soccer program. You're choosing it because it's the best fit for you, both athletically and academically.
Thank you. And Coach Tyler, if you would answer the hard question, I guess, the drawbacks of going to an NCAA Division III school, and maybe the biggest misperception of an NCAA Division III school.
Those are sometimes one and the same. The massive difference between D1 and D3 is the time allowed with a coach, soccer specific time with a coach. The reality is Division IIIs quite often, if done right, if supported correctly, tends to be less rules because it's blanket for most of the period outside of the fall competitive season. It's generally kind of sort of hands off other than a prototypical spring season for most of Division III. So in that regard, with sort of a blank canvas, the best schools often operate in gray areas through physical education classes, strength and conditioning, etc. All, mind you, NCAA Division III legal, or certainly legal with their conference to conference. But in that regard, sky's the limit. So if you're a young person that really wants to work incredibly hard to better yourself season to season, I don't think that's going to be limited at a Division III. The time with the soccer coach would be limited. Other drawbacks of Division III might be the institution does not support the sport as well as maybe others. Title IX's obviously out there, but sometimes Division III being the biggest athletic division, there might be a program or two that just doesn't have the money that's compared to a Division I athletic program. Division I athletic programs make a conscious effort to have athletic scholarships and all that entails. So you might, but at the same token, some schools that are Division III, Bates, I'd like to think is top of that list of Tier 1 academics, but there's schools like University of Chicago, NYU, Williams, Amherst, Bates that are Emory down in your neck of the woods that are just loaded with money. And therefore their student athlete experience is a good one.
Right. That was great information. I appreciate it. Thank you. And this, I'm going to ask both of you the same questions on this page, just because it's more about you and your school and your coaching style. So if Coach Bryan, you want to start and let us hear about your coaching style.
Yeah, so on the field specifically, it's going to change program to program. Obviously, not just on head coach, but you can't always handpick your personnel like you could if you had athletic scholarship. So a bit of it is personnel based and could change year to year. For the most part here, one of the tenets and one of the great things about our program is how diverse it is. I think last year we had 13 different countries and 11 or 12 different states represented on the team. And one of the things I want to do is blend all those different styles. So one of the best things, one of the good things that come out of diversity is we're really hard to prepare for. So I really encourage our guys to be creative. I want their creativity to come through. I'm not going to put them in a system year to year that they may not fit. So creativity is a big thing. And kind of alluding back to some of the drawbacks, one of the core tenets of our program is self-accountability. So in the off season, I can't be standing over you, making you go to the gym, making you get on the ball, making you get your touches. That's got to be you. It's got to be a little intrinsic motivation. So, I mean, if I had to throw two things out there that kind of define our program, it's creativity and self-accountability.
Excellent. Thank you. And Coach Tyler?
I started, I think, like all of us, as a fan. I had a dad who grew up in Eastern Africa and two older brothers. So I'm a demonstrative coach, unabashedly so. American college soccer is definitively different than club soccer. Club soccer, I was talking to an English kid today who plays with QPR. And, with this QPR team, like if they need to, halfway through the season, could take an 8-0 drubbing from the Chelsea Academy because they might be implementing a new system or trying a player out elsewhere or whatever might be the case to develop the player. Yes, we are about developing players, but when we're in that very small window of fall NCAA champion competitive season, we're trying to get the most out of we can in a short time. And I make sure it starts with passion and energy. I'm working with future doctors, CFOs, lawyer types. So, at Bates, I like to call myself more of a players coach, manager. But I tell them all the time, I'm trying to put in a performance just like them. So I expect the same way that when a player plays Bates, a team plays Bates College, that they're going to feel us. I want my players to sort of know that I'm there too. Despite the fact that, the same token from everything off the field, I try and make sure my players know it's the direction of that side of the program is where they want to take it. So. Absolutely.
I've always told my kids, make sure they don't ever want to return to the field to play us again, right? That's make them feel
within the laws of the game.
Within the laws of the game, absolutely.
There you go,
sure.
Trent.
So thanks, guys. And Tyler, we'll start with you, but we always talk to our kids about, you can tell a lot about a coach by who their mentors and influencers are in their coaching career. So could you spend a little bit of time talking about who your coaching mentors and influencers are? Yeah,
I think the best of us grab a bit from everybody. But I grew up in the tri-state area, which is Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and not a big baseball guy, but the Yankee network, the Yes Network is what it was called back then, showed one Prem game a year, and it was Manchester United, or one Prem game a week, if you will, and it was often Manchester United. And there was this brash Frenchman with its popped up collar, and old Umbro uniforms that my own club used to wear. And it was Eric Cantona, who was a legend in the 90s that maybe the players might know, but the coaches will.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did a deep dive on the club, obviously fell in love with Matt Busby, the history back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then obviously Sir Alex Ferguson, who we all know from the 90s and 2000s. So I think Sir Alex Ferguson is a massive influence, and watching United games now week in and week out the last couple of decades. And then, before his time, brash Brian Clough, who thought he was the best and backed it up. And then, I think in the modern era now, maybe someone like a tactician like Jose Mourinho. I think it's important that a head coach needs to be a benevolent dictator. And I mean that in the nicest of ways. I honestly do have a good relationship with my players, but I do think a head coach has to be a head coach. Sometimes you have a coach and you wonder, if they're best served as an assistant. So I make sure all things about leadership that I can eat up, I do. And I think someone like Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the best ever to do it.
Yeah. One of my mentors is actually on the call today, Chris B, and he says it's been a tough time for Man United fans for the last 6 years. So
Bruno Fernandes made one complete pass, and I said he was world class. So yeah.
And what about you, Coach Bryan?
Yeah, I mean, not to give him too much of an ego, but I started my coaching career under Tyler, so he's kind of molded and shaped me.
Far too kind.
We'll make sure his head stays on the screen, right?
Right. All right, I'll call him and make fun of it.
There you go.
But when he talks about having teams feel us and having a certain attitude that you need to go into games, because D3 can be rough and tumble and direct, no matter how nice you want to play. You gotta find a way to be effective. So I would say Tyler, and then growing up in Central Illinois, not exactly the soccer hotbed of the United States. The only way you saw soccer besides the World Cup was the Prem highlight show in the middle of the day. So you got to stay home sick from school to to watch it on Fox Sports. But through family ties and stuff, I grew up and still am a big Celtic supporter. And watching highlights and seeing a guy like Henrik Larsson, underrated in his time as a striker, paired with someone like John Hartson, who was made for the Scottish game. Being able to, metaphorically punch someone in the mouth and, still play pretty soccer. I think that's been a recipe for success here at Knox, being able to, step on both sides. And then overall coach, I love Coach K. Tyler is going to roll his eyes, but the way he incorporated using athletics as a platform to teach about other things in your life and using as a preparation for your job in the business world as a doctor, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. And Coach Bryan, we'll stay with you, but what traits are important to you, or what traits are important to you on and off the field when you're out looking for recruits and in your players?
Yeah, so showcases are a bit of a simulated environment, nothing on the line in most of them. So what I look for is really how you interact with everybody else and your demeanor. So, it goes from coaches and teammates to even dealing with the other team, and how you carry yourself in certain situations. You almost learn more about a player when they're down 4-0 than when they're up 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
What's their attitude like? What's their work rate like? And those coaches watch that. All coaches watch that. So, honestly, you're just looking to try and get a glimpse into their overall character as much as you can.
Absolutely. And how about you, Coach Tyler?
Echo the same sentiments. I do similarly. I like to get there beforehand. I like to watch half times after the games. More and more now that I've gotten Bates to the talent level that's necessary after our second season here on the NESCAC, double overtime against the national champions last season. We're there now. Now it's like, and it was hilarious. Again, going back to the English kid I was talking to today, and it's not an English thing or an American thing. I almost sometimes wonder if it's an old school thing, but he spoke to specifically out of his mouth, willing and wanting to make the plays that win games, be it tracking back, making a run that pulls a defender away as an offensive player, being the start of a press as an attacking player, to putting in the tackles and the type of work that's not often on box scores. But those are the things that I try and glean as much as we can, especially when, you were recruiting at a mid-major Division I type level against Patriot Leagues and the CAA, Colonial Athletic Association. So, and the Ivies as well. So we're looking at guys that, like Bryan said, can be rough and tumble. But I remember one season I showed that a couple of years ago when I thought Tottenham and City were the two best, brand of football in world football, arguably. And I showed them an entire half of City Tottenham, and it was pretty direct. And quite frankly, it was like Dele Alli jumping on second balls, David Silva picking something up from Fernandinho and then making a play in transitions. And it's what we try and do as coaches at the youth level all the way up to college is we work often on transitions. And then ultimately, can we put players in a position where they're making the match winners are winning matches for you or not? So I'm looking for all those sort of traits that Bryan talked about, that the mental, the toughness, but at the same token, I'm also looking for magic. If a kid scores a goal, I do write that down, type of thing. So let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coach Tyler, we'll stick with you. Your evaluation and feedback style, both formally and informally, to your current players throughout the season and in the off season.
Yeah, obviously this off season now and the summer months, spring and summer months have been weird. We've been doing the Zoom thing often, but being kind of, I'm always in a hoodie type of thing as a college coach. It's just a lot of conversations in person. It's almost weird, and we laugh about it if a kid comes into my office. That's meant more for recruitment. That's meant more for, budget talks with an administrator. I want to meet my players on the field, talk to them on the field, give them feedback in the moment, put my arm around them after a session, something along those lines. But I give them also a 360 sort of evaluation process where they can kind of, doors always open, but they can also give feedback in a survey type thing, where it's what other things would you like to see? What training sessions did you like the most? It usually jives. I had one D1 transfer that came in and slapped 2 pages down on my desk. And I was like, all right, I agree with you. How much of this can we implement? So, we can have tit for tat that way. And I want them to be able to speak with me on a certain level because I am dealing with men. So I think my feedback style is very personable.
Excellent. And Coach Bryan, same to you. And I think you played for Coach Tyler, or he was an assistant at Illinois while you were there?
No, so I had graduated already.
Oh, okay.
And was assistant.
So and maybe touch about it as an assistant in the same level, like what your feedback style, or for both of your staff, since Coach Tyler's expectations of his staff, what the expectations of your staff on their feedback style as well.
Yeah, so I'll start as an assistant first.
Cool.
The key word is you're part of the head coach's staff. Tyler was always willing to hear my ideas and wanted my input, and most of the good head coaches, that's what they do.
Right.
But as an assistant, you have to kind of defer to their vision a little bit. It's their name on the win-loss record. So you gotta roll with what they want. And, a lot of times the head coach is the one that's making the lineup. You know, he's deciding who's getting the minutes and who's not.
Yeah.
So going from assistant to head at the same program was an interesting transition.
Yeah.
But you know, as an assistant, sometimes you got to play the good cop. Or in cases of some of your better players, you play the bad cop. So it's really running a staff is all about communication.
Yep.
And I kind of run my staff in Tyler's mold. So, and you know, going from assistant to head, I am extremely upfront with my players. A lot of D3, almost all D3 schools are enrollment driven. So you're going to see bigger roster sizes at the D3 level as opposed to the D1 and D2 level. You know, we have 35. So, you know, with that, we also have a full reserve program. So guys are playing every week. But, you know, if you don't tell players where they stand in a roster of 35, there's going to be some hurt feelings and honestly, an unenviable situation of not knowing where you stand amongst like that.
They almost get daily feedback, though, from you, Bryan, like in terms of because of that system, the reserve system, up to you have like that competitive cauldron that's almost pushing up bottom top, and then you have your top guys as well. They're trickle down too.
Exactly. And, you know, we don't train as a reserve team and a first team. We train as a team. And one of the big benefits that we've seen in the past couple years is mixing up training, mixing up teams a little bit more. So you kind of stoke the fire in that competitive cauldron where, you know, guys that aren't getting the minutes are going up against guys that get the minutes. You know, and they see their level of competition rise and theirs rises with it. So,
For sure.
yeah, so you get immediate feedback from me.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And when you're out on the recruiting trail, Coach Bryan, we'll stay with you. What are some of the non-negotiables that you just, you know, you look at and you say, that kid's not a good fit for my program?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to change from coach to coach. I mean, obviously, if you're uncoachable and it's plain to see, that's going to be a trigger for every coach, you know. But one of the things I really look at is when guys get subbed off, or when they get coached a little bit, when they get yelled at a little bit. How do you react? Now, there's different players that take criticism different ways, and you have to coach different players different ways. It's not, you know, one size fits all, but when you're in the fight in the middle of the game, kind of your true colors pop out, and how do you react? How do you react to that? And if you're responding to the coach every time he says something, or when a teammate says something, that's kind of a red flag for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such important information. Kids always forget when they get subbed off. Coaches are still watching, and probably even watching more. I've had several coaches that have come and asked, hey, can I sit a couple of feet behind your bench just so I can watch, you know, what happens when you sub this kid off, or when it's a water break or something. So Coach Tyler, same to you?
Ours, believe it or not, actually begins more with just like the technical. If they're not proficient enough, again, at like a mid, worst case scenario, low major Division I level clip, then I can't take the minutes and hours out of my season to spend time on that. The kids need to be, there's some kids that when I've given them a hard time, you know, you're 10,000 reps behind type of situation. Mm-hmm. You know, usually to light a little fire under their butt, but technical proficiency is first and foremost. And does that mean kids can't make mistakes? No, of course not. Absolutely. Make all the mistakes in the world. And does that mean mistakes sometimes are behaviorally as well, like the F-bomb here, or potentially sometimes I think I agree with what Bryan said wholeheartedly, but sometimes you can also get a situation where the kid's coming off and he doesn't want to come off, and everyone could have used a Wayne Rooney in his prime. So we look at everything. One thing I can tell you is the best coaches will do their darndest to look at you in multiple settings as well. So either seeing you multiple times, club, high school, ID camp format, sometimes when you're playing with dudes that you don't know how you interact at a water break. to echo a lot of the sentiments that Bryan was saying. But, again, going back to, what's important to us, and it has to start with a certain level of player. It does. Right. And I would also include athlete. When kids are dogging it, I just, you need to be a college soccer player year round. Fitness is massive to what we do. Absolutely.
And Tyler, we'll stick with you. Do you look at your prospective student athletes' social media? And how about your current players?
Yeah, for the most part, mostly. So we just had a giving day for the college. Weird to do, obviously, in the times of COVID with everything being tough. But making sure that guys were reposting, regramming. I don't know what the phrase is from platform to platform. But right. One kid gave and May 1st was when we were allowed to, because that's deposit deadline at a regular decision at Bates College, and I think most colleges, right, Bryan? So that's when we're allowed to, with our conference rules, then release our class. And I asked for their videos, their highlight videos, about a month ago, and my assistant and I started putting some together. And there was one young man that had F-bombs and N-words on his video. And I took the time to call up his mother, not to tattletale, but to speak about why this isn't what we want. Is the kid, did the kid mean anything by? No, I'm sure it was a popular song. But that just cannot be in this day and age. Included in that is, one of my kids was in a Zoom meeting, and you could tell he was kind of in his, and probably his special, and there was a beer can in the background. Get it out. Not during a team meeting. It's not like could have been from Saturday night. The kid was 21 plus. He's fifth year senior. Right. I don't want it there. So never mind in the social media side of things. There's a certain sort of thing. The hooded sweatshirt is cultivated. That's purposeful just as much as if I was on this in a suit and tie. But I need my guys to be thinking like that on social media just as much. If they want it to be sweatshirt or suit and tie, I want them always to be thinking in that regard, because they're from the day they commit, they're a Bates men's soccer player until, quite frankly, then they're a Bobcat alum. Yep, absolutely. And Coach Bryan, same to you.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big social media guy. So my assistant checks the recruits' social media, but we do take a look at it. And then as far as the current players, I follow all of them on everything: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Haven't got TikTok yet, but
it'll draw you in. Nope, don't do it.
I say don't do it because my friends have showed me, and it's pretty funny. Yeah, it will draw you in.
So, but mainly my message is, in the time of social media, mistakes aren't as quickly forgiven as when I was in college. You could afford to make some of those mistakes on social media, and of course, it's about representing the program, representing Knox soccer, representing Knox College. But at the same time, that's there forever. Right. You're looking to get a job somewhere. It's become, run-of-the-mill procedure to check your social media. So it's as much about, represent us well as this is what it's going to be like in the future. So absolutely. That's my take on it.
Great advice. Thank you. And Coach Tyler, I'm going to start with you. And what kind of academic support does your program and school offer as far as like tutoring, student centers, academic advisors to the section?
So our admission rate, raw numbers this past cycle is about 13%. So we're working with elite academics. Anecdotally, this happens every year. And it's mostly as a little Ivy because we are a smaller school in a class of 500 where, kids don't get into us and then they get into an Ivy institution type situation. So the kids come to us ready-made. A lot of the support services that I've seen our boys use actually are less writing centers and the like. They usually, those are all there in their one-stop shop, level by level in our library. and that to get to Bates, they've utilized all those to get to Bates in the first place. But it's much more of a mental health stuff. There's more kids, if they're not getting the A, that they're freaking out, and I need to drop that class, or those sort of things. It's not to say that my team's full of a bunch of 18-year-olds going on 40-year-olds. I'm just very high performing in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And but no, they scaffold off of one another quite a bit in the library. And when they need to, they'll leave their study area and they'll go down and get math help, or they'll go up and they'll go to the writing center. And in there, it's the writing center is, I think, a bit more generalized, but the school itself, has it specific towards a class. There's a lot of TAs that are available as well. So it's not just a subject, but more for Chem 121 with Professor so-and-so than it is chemistry as a broad thing. So right. Am I
you're
breaking
good.
up, or
yeah,
am I good?
You froze for a second, but you're good now. So,
yeah.
And Bryan, if you want to touch on that, as well as we've also talked to some JUCOs in the past couple of weeks, as well as NAIA schools. So just to give the kids a little bit of a different taste of the resources for specialized interests and what a Division III school can do for them once they've decided on their major and are headed in that direction as well.
Yeah, as far as the resources, it's good. It's pretty similar to what Bates has. We have a thing called the Red Room in the library. It's this giant red room, that red carpet that Lincoln sat in, so it's been there a while. But it's tutoring not just for chemistry, for chemistry 101 with Professor so-and-so. Another great thing about D3 schools is usually the professor to student ratio is low. I think at Knox it's like 1 to 13 or 14. And a lot of D3 schools aren't research institutions. The professors are there to teach, not necessarily to do research. So you'll get a lot more investment from them, personal investment in you from them, which you can utilize, and which a lot of our guys do. And then for sort of the specialized interest, each small D3 school, especially liberal arts schools, have to prove that they have the outcomes, in the job world. Otherwise, what are you paying money to go there for? So a lot of D3 schools will have very specialized programs for certain jobs. So at Knox, we have this thing. We're a great business school. We have a entrepreneurial term. I don't know, spit that out. But you and one or two other people have an office downtown, and you run a business for a term, and that's how well that business does. Is your grade. So, and you'll find different things like that all over D3.
Yeah, such an important thing. And I think, Bryan, you said your average class size was 1 to 13 about?
Yeah. So your gen eds will be a bit larger. Your 101s will be a bit larger, but once you get into 200-300 level classes, you'll see a class size about 1 to 13, 1 to 15.
Excellent. And Coach Tyler, how about you? How about your average class size?
I have no idea. I don't. I go back to the outcome thing. That was what I just picked up from Bryan's bit is the outcome. We're so alumni driven, and where they are, and they want to pull in a fellow Bobcat type situation. It's why a lot of people will choose Bates in that regard. But no, obviously, anecdotally, players telling me if they're in a STEM program and it's a higher level 300 class, less than 10 kids, and the professor has them for pizza to study for the exam type of thing.
Right.
But I also know there's a couple, bigger seminars, probably upwards 50 to 100 types. So in that regard, it's kind of cool that you can have some courses throughout your 4 years that have a little bit of both.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of kids are looking for that. We had a webinar with the kids and talked about the recruiting processes and regulations and guidelines. But if you would mind touching on, Tyler, when you start your recruiting process of a prospective student athlete, and then Bryan, I'll come to you.
It's getting crazier and crazier. I'm sure what people are saying in terms of early, and there's been some rules to Division I of late where now it's sort of been advantageous to Division III now, where they can hop on. So we're hopping on 2022s already, pretty thoroughly actually. List upwards 40, 50 some odd guys for what will end up being a class of maybe 6. And in between now 2020 and 2022, when we have to make decisions, that'll probably get much bigger. Of course, some will fall. They'll choose elsewhere. We find out it won't work for them academically, etc. But I do think that your younger players, 8th graders, 9th graders, go ahead, sign up for an ID clinic that's close to you, and and see what happens if you catch the eye of someone. If anything, I always used to tell Bryan this when he was assisting for me, and he went on interviews left and right for head coaching jobs. Is you're always picking up how to do something better the next time. So if you know how to do an ID clinic well as a freshman, you're going to be that much better as a junior when it's really the witching hour of decision-making time. Yeah, I mean, we have to operate academically through an ED1 and ED2 window because that's sort of binding academically to attend our school. So that's sort of how we make a legit verbal offer that way, and to commit to you through the admissions process, and the kid commits to Bates in that regard that way, because as you noted, there isn't an athletic scholarship that we're handing over. But our school, little Ivies, the Ivies, I believe, the MITs of the world, certainly, even though they're not an Ivy or little Ivy, but those tier 1 academics, the UAA schools, which I noted, Emory down in your neck of the woods, those type of institutions, we meet need. So, meeting need financially is just knowing that, if your family isn't going to require aid, and you can't demonstrate a need, then you're not going to get it from our school. Conversely, and this is where sometimes if you get a kid who doesn't have much and they happen to be a D1 talent, and they can get admitted, they're getting a huge chunk of change to go to a school that, the sticker price is $70,000 plus, I think, at this point. So that's where you get at our level, the New England Small College Athletic Conference, you get, for lack of a better term, Division I athletes at our Division III institutions, because we're meeting their need.
And Coach Bryan, same to you. When do you start the recruiting process for Knox?
Yeah, so we're a little different than the little Ivies and the Ivy League schools. If you consider that's kind of the tier 1 academics, so their timeline is bumped up a little bit because, frankly, who doesn't want to go there? Right. Fantastic education, we're kind of the top of tier 2. So right now, we're pretty much identified our class of 2021, whereas that pool Tyler alluded to, and we're starting to get the pre-reads in for them, getting ready for the window, EA, early decision, early action to open up. And then right now building our pool for 2022.
Great. And what is your average cost of tuition fees for a student athlete at Knox?
So it ranges anywhere from normally $20,000 to $30,000 a year.
Thank you. And Coach Tyler at Bates?
I think that's generally about where they go as well. I think the big thing I'm concerned with when I'm recruiting is the 60-40 split. We're 60% full pay students, 40% are students that receive that aid and we meet their need. We're also, despite being up in Maine, which is up there, gorgeous though, nicknamed Vacation Land for those of you that are interested. Summertime is just as beachy as Florida is, however, year round. So for me, when I go back to the recruiting and the costs, you're gonna oftentimes it comes down to the almighty dollar. I understand that, but you're often weighing up as well. How much when you go out and buy a pair of cleats, is that $100 cleat you're holding in your hand? Like, you got to ask yourself that. And nowadays there's not a cleat that's under $100. So it's like, I'm not going to go for the $80 cleat. Right. You got to ask yourself, does the $80 cleat do the job? Or does the $140 CR7s, are they worth it? I don't know. But sometimes these schools, different ways, be it merit-based scholarship, as Bryan was alluding to, at Knox, or a school like Bates if you're a family that does have need, or if you're not, maybe it's worth it to go to a Tier 1 education. Likewise, I was a student that ended up at Division I level, but I started at JUCO, and it was a fantastic path for me. My older brothers, much smarter than me, went to NESCAC schools, the same conference I'm coaching in now. So there's a lot of different paths I think can fit for a family. My folks were teachers, so we were middle class. But you really want to, the better you are as a student, the more the coach can do for you with their package. And that could include at Division I and Division II level, potentially stacking athletic scholarships with academic scholarship. Right. Now you're cooking.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm going to put these two up there together. And then we also have a question from Giancarlo. So it kind of ties into that. But how competitive is Division III soccer? Do you play against Division I and II schools? And Giancarlo throws in there, what's the highest level of competition you have coached against? So Coach Bryan, you want to start?
Yeah, so to answer the competitive, is D3 soccer competitive? Absolutely. It is ultra competitive, and a lot of these schools have a lot of history, are very old, so they've been playing the same conference schools for a long time. So there's rivalries all over the place, and it's absolutely competitive. So do we play Division I and Division II schools? Not in season, not in the competitive season. Most of the times when D3 schools will play Division I or II schools, it's either in the spring season or as a scrimmage. So scrimmage leading up to the season. And, I would take my guys up against a lot of Division I and Division II programs. So, a lot of them chose lower academic D1s or D2s. They chose Knox over that because of the academic portion. So, I think, the Power Five's a different level altogether. Right. I won't lump those in there, but, it's, can you be effective and can you get your tactics right? So I feel pretty confident against anybody.
Absolutely. And Coach Tyler, if you'll touch on the day in the life of an NCAA Division III athlete, and maybe split it between the fall season and the spring season for your level.
Sure. I'll say it's not, having been way back when, almost 20 years ago now as a Division I athlete, but I wasn't very good. But just the idea that the Division I life and the Division III life in season's not very different. It's not very different at all. It's 6 out of 7 days a week that the NCAA permits you to be with your team and with your coaches and training, or on the road. It's a very intensive fall. Generally speaking, it's going to mirror what many of your players at club level experience at the high school level, which is classes somewhere in the 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. type of window, 3 p.m. type of window, and then it's soccer at some point in the afternoon. Sometimes certain schools, like we might get in a 6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. session. Maybe it's a finishing session or it's a walkthrough. And in the evening or afternoon, somewhere around, make sure you're leapfrogging the dinner hours, but you're getting in your training. And that includes the time we allot for pre-training and post-training, which could be in the athletic training room, physios, locker room time is how a team gels. So there's a lot of hours invested rather into the fall season. Outside of in the Division III level is when you get some of that time back to potentially explore the great state of Maine at Bates College, or it could be the study abroad thing, which a lot of kids do in their junior years. So I think the day in the life outside of is different, but we still have lifting groups. There's PE classes the difference is it tends to be much more optional than compulsory in the fall. So there's that little bit of wiggle room versus if you're a Division I athlete and attached to a scholarship, it's compulsory. And Bryan used the phrase job, you don't want to lose your access to education by not showing up for a 7:30 a.m. team lift.
Right. Thank you. And just want to give you guys a second to tell our Florida Rush kids, and I think we have some kids from Virginia Rush on here as well, why your program. So we'll start with Bates and Tyler, Coach Tyler. Why Bates College?
Oh, for us, it always starts with the institution. I think there's a lot of great people that came before our lads currently in the side that laid a lot of groundwork and blueprints really for success academically and socially. On the program front, I've been here not even 2 years, but 2 seasons. The second season we just had is the best we've had in 2 decades. I alluded to losing to the national champion in double overtime, the national runner-up 2-1. We're right there. We're making history, and it's a fun time to join us, have that access to high-level education, and join us to hopefully be the first to ever be champions at our school.
Excellent. And Coach Bryan, why Knox College?
Yeah, there's really 3 things I talk about in the recruiting process. The first thing is, as Tyler alluded to, the institution. Knox is a place, while maybe not a tier 1, it's a place that's well positioned to get you where you need to go. We have, a kid that just went off to Goldman Sachs, kid at Harvard Law. You go there for the academics and what it can do for you. And the second thing is the experience. Knox is one of the few schools in the Midwest where, American football isn't king. It's a very well supported program. The soccer, both men's and women's, is supported well. And ultimately the experience of playing with guys from all over the world and all over the country. It's something kind of unique that you won't forget. And I always say you'll have a bed to sleep on in every continent, your entire life going forward. So,
Absolutely.
Those are the things.
Yeah, I love that. And those that were able to join us, now's your chance to type in any questions that you might have for Coach Bryan and Coach Tyler as we start to wrap up. And wish we were able to have more student athletes, but unfortunately we went through the hacking problem. But if you guys don't mind, Coach Tyler, I'll start with you, and maybe any final advice to our players and to the players that will watch this recorded about, training during this COVID-19 lockdown, the recruiting process during this time. And if both of you don't mind, really talking about highlight videos, and maybe one thing that you really want to see in a highlight video and one thing that you just don't want to see, that you've seen a lot, and also any final thoughts you might have.
Sure. Bryan and I were just talking in between the hacking when we were going from Zoom 1 to Zoom 2. And we even said about how the best players, the best coaches, the best programs, they're going to come out of this really figuring out who wants it, who can get creative, who's going to do it when it's not easy. So I don't ever want to hear excuses about the training during this time. No one wants renegade or vigilante soccer players, but I've had the anecdotes from recruits and my players alike of, cops coming to get them off of field or those sort of things. Everyone should be safe and social distancing, but there's ways to be creative. Obviously, I've always said if there's a ball on a wall, you got all you need. And you should be students. You should be sponges of your sport. If you can't ask Trent and his network of coaches at the Florida Rush or the other states, coaching, I would advise that you Google it. There's a lot of soccer expertise out there, and there's many ways to skin a cat, so to speak. So, and then the other question, Trent, was about the video stuff.
Yeah. So maybe
so
one thing that you always like to see, or that catches your eye, and maybe one thing that you've seen that.
Show us what you do. Show us what you're about. So if you're a fullback and you get up and down, show us that. Don't just show us crunching tackles. Don't just show us passes into the 6. Show us getting up and down. And all of a sudden, maybe it can, especially in a time of COVID where I might not be able to watch you for 2 games over the course of a showcase and see what you're like in the 170th minute on the day, I might be able to glean that you get up and down the field really well and you got an engine. So show us your strengths in the highlight clip. Make sure you show the moments before and after. It's a little funky when it's like, where are they? And it's a little snippet. But I would also, to that end, especially in the time of COVID, send us a half. Send us, and I get it, make it a good half, but send us a half, potentially a full game. Let us know where you are, when you get subbed out, those sort of things, so we can go in and kind of check out the level, check out, the 21 other players around you as well.
Absolutely. And Coach Bryan?
Yeah, we had a Zoom team meeting the other day, and we're talking about it's one of the rare occasions where everybody is in the same boat. Conferences have different rules on spring season. Some can play games, some can't. Everybody's in the same boat. No one's been able to train or play. And who's going to have a good season is who can, whatever that season look like, is who can turn that into an advantage. How can you take advantage of the time better than other schools and other programs are? And as for video, everything Tyler said, and then I would add, put pertinent information on the video. GPA, what high school you go to, what club you play for, all that kind of stuff. The more information we have, the better. And
contact information.
Yeah, correct information.
It's yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, nowadays, YouTube and all those cookies on the internet, and stuff, if a video begins and ends of a player, it will go into another YouTube clip of another kid. I'm not kidding. I've come back to, one of my daughters pulls me away, and I come back 2 minutes. I'm like, who's this kid?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, they're a YouTube clip a kid, and it's like I can't, have my assistant spend the next day trying to track them down or track down their coach. The easier you make it for us, I just alluded to it. We all got something going on, but I got a 3-week-old in the other room. It's make it easy for me. Make it easy for me to recruit you.
Excellent. And is there one thing that you guys have seen that just makes you turn the video off instantly? Maybe something you could give to the kids and say, do not ever put that in there. I mean, obviously swear words, rap songs, all that kind of stuff. Be smart with that, but maybe something you're just like, I don't need to see this. We're gonna move on.
Special effects. I've had kids the ball will explode when they strike it.
What? That's all.
Yeah.
A good one.
Yeah. So that's the number one thing. And then I would say early on, keep it strictly to soccer. I've had guys send me stuff of other interests, whether it be choir or theater, which is all great, and I want to know. But as an introduction, I would stick to the soccer and the academics.
Excellent, thank you. And we do have a couple questions here. Those of you that were able to join us and jump over from the other Zoom meeting, feel free to type them into the chat box. But Giancarlo has another question. What's more important in your opinion, and I'll open this up to both of you, but a hardworking player who is less talented or a player who is way more talented but never does anything you would ask? Trying to read that. Let's do this.
Carlo, you know the answer to that.
Yeah.
There's already a lot of quotes out there. Listen, the best coaches will work with talented players. Bryan, amazing coach. He and I recruited a young man from Nigeria who's just, you only dream to have his talent. And I, retrospect, probably incorrectly, maybe correctly, because maybe it led him to the trough and he finally drank from it, but tried to bend him to my will. And this is what an NCAA program is, and this is what you need to do, and toe the line. And Bryan kind of, by the time he took over him as a junior, let him go. Incredibly talented young man, but not your prototypical NCAA program standard. And he probably came into a session or two late, Bryan, I'm assuming. He ended up being an All-American for Bryan. So, listen, we'll work with talent. We want talent, but you're not wrong sometimes when the chips are down, it's like, who can we trust? Will we take a guy who's always a 7 over the guy who's 9-2, and their performances? It's important that we can trust that you'll get that good performance out.
Excellent. And we have another question from Nicholas. Nicholas, thanks for joining us. Do you guys focus more on high school performances or club performances, or both? And I know you guys are in different parts of the region of this.
No, Bryan, take that. We're probably the same on that, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, Nicholas, we just look at the overall level in the video. Both of us are pretty in tune with the level of high schools in our region. There's going to be high schools where it's, I don't want to see you score 6 goals against somebody you should score 7 goals against. I want to see the clips of, a collegiate level if possible. So, it doesn't matter club, high school, but we do look at the level that you're playing against. So if you're going to send a clip, and it's a highly touted team, like, throw that in the video too, versus so-and-so who was ranked this.
Yeah.
So give us an idea of your level, a better idea.
Great information. And if anybody comes up with questions in the next couple days, or when they're watching this on YouTube when it's posted, please feel free to send them over to me at Florida Rush Soccer, and I will definitely reach out to Coach Tyler and Coach Bryan. But on behalf of Florida Rush Soccer and the Rush Cap program and Virginia Rush, as I know we have some Virginia Rush participants with us today as well, I'd like to thank both of you for spending your time with us and your programs, Bates College and Knox College, and wish you guys the best of luck with the lockdown and also next season. And hopefully we will be able to get some Florida Rush players into your great programs here in the next couple of years. So thank you guys, and look forward to speaking with you guys again soon.
Thank you much. Thanks, Trent. Class act.
Thank you.